Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Between the Lines. My name is John Lofton here. I'm having a great Sunday. I hope you guys are too. We have an exciting show. It's just me talking again here today, but I have some fantastic stuff I think that a lot of Americans have on our mind today, and we're going to dive into that. And but just as a recap, what I want to just briefly do here is just kind of give you guys an overview of what we're doing here. Brand new show. We're still doing it on original YouTube. I've been doing the same for a couple weeks, so we're finally going to get our YouTube channel. I need graphics, and I would love it if anybody watching is interested in co-hosting. If you have any radio experience, looking for some people to pop in. It doesn't have to be an all-the-time thing, but it is nice not to just be talking to myself and get in kind of the groundwork of a brand new, live show that we get to do every week. And eventually we'll be getting our podcast set up, possibly a website, hopefully syndication, sponsorships down the road. But anyway, the format of the show is essentially where we pick a topic every week, and it's about a 30-minute show. So about the first half of the show, I or a guest would spend just giving you guys some stories about why we think the way we think about a certain subject or topic. And then we get to the point where we talk about where our stance is on, that particular issue. And then, once that's all done, then I kind of go into my stance and kind of the reasons why I'm thinking about it. And then the goal of the show is, if you don't agree with me or agree with the people who are going to be featured on the show, at the very least, you walk away with a understanding of why the person thinks the way they do, that you make the logical sense out of it, and you don't just hear someone shouting in your ear their opinion and you don't really understand why. Because I think a lot of opinions do matter in the sense that we all need to have better understanding for each other. And so, but to the people who do agree with a lot of the views that I have and share, I just want to have a platform too for those folks who say, finally, somebody says the things that I'm thinking about, as a person here, and what's going on in the world, or an experience that a lot of people maybe don't want to talk about. They kind of get a little bit hot buttony on them. And I guess you would consider myself kind of a moderate. I'm very much in the middle, which is why I felt this show needed to exist. Normally this screen here would be popular with my other guests who are going to be featured on the show, but for today, it is just me. And so today's subject, we're going to be diving into the whole world of government finance, and in particular talking about the stimulus package that the House of Representatives just passed in the wee hours of the morning, and then how it's going to be perceived in the Senate. And what are some other things that folks need to think about when we discuss stimulus? I think in my lifetime, I'm not sure that the government's ever paid out a government money, unless you're getting Social Security, of money, just to its citizens. So this is a whole paradigm that some people argue, is, well, it's our money. I paid to the government. Yeah, well, the government already lost your money. I mean, I'm going to be talking about that. This gives you kind of a preview. But I'm going to be telling you why I'm going to be arguing that point. And it'd be really cool if I had someone else here with me, but hey, maybe next week could be you. So if you're interested at all, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments or private message me directly. I'm on live right now on Facebook and YouTube. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out and see what we can do. Okay, so talking about that. So the first part of this, the show, as I said, is just kind of a story time. I got some stuff I want to share from my experiences, especially how I grew up managing money. What I wish I could tell the government, if I had my senators and representatives here, elected officials sitting right in front of me. And I feel like they're not a radical left, radical right. That's kind of my position on most things in life, is I don't really think that just because I may not agree with it doesn't mean I can't live with it, kind of thing. I'm kind of one of those people. And the same goes with money. I kind of get everybody's viewpoint on how they handle money. But at the end of the day, how I vote and what I think about money and think about taxes and the government and its use of the money that, well, I don't even have an option to pay them, but I pay them, it's mandated. You don't really get a choice to pay the government. Once it's passed, it's passed. Tough luck. Got to pay it. If you fall in a certain tax bracket, got to pay it. So, so when I was a kid, I did like the, I guess things that every kid does. You start learning about personal finance, adding and subtracting of money. I remember the first time I learned how to write a dollar sign, on a piece of paper or something like that. It was weird. What's this S with 2 lines in it? And then, the cent sign back then, I used to write the cent out. They used to tell you to do that. Now that I don't even know if anyone uses the cent sign. You guys, decimal point, 2 places, good enough. But as far as actually knowing how to budget and knowing how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, what are things that you can control your month to month, and what are things that you can, either spend more or less depending on what type of budgeting you have and what kind of income you have. So going that, and I would hope that most kids, even in, public schools and all that, I remember, there was a science center kind of thing when I was a kid. Maybe your kids did this too. Maybe your kid did this as well when you're my young age. But there was a science center sort of thing. But it wasn't really a science center. It was like I don't know. It was like a mini town for kids, if you will. It had everything. Police station, fire department, and then a grocery store and bank. So I'll focus on my experience with the grocery store and the bank. And so the grocery store was where you could take these mini shopping carts, fill them up with, fake food, go around, grab empty milk gallon jugs and put them in. Well, they told you that you had 200 coins that you could spend. And as you went through the store, you had to not only grab the item that you wanted, but write down how much it cost. And you were supposed to keep a running total of how much it costs. Now, obviously, they simplified things. We have things like POP, and like in Iowa, you have tax. You got your deposit tax, so you would normally factor that in. If that makes a difference, like if you're bringing a 24 case of POP, it's $1.20. So, to keep things simple, okay. So you ran this total, and at the end, you went up and they didn't really have a cash register. You had to go out and you would submit it, and I think there was someone like an aide or something who went through and you put everything away and you added it up and to see if you had enough money, if you stayed within your 200 coin budget. And most people did, because when you think about it like that, it makes sense. Here's what happens in real life though. All right. You say you have $200 that week in groceries. Just throwing out a number. I'm not saying it's like my number, a realistic number for any given family. But let's say you as a family unit, either 1, 2, I hope not 3 people, but if that, but whatever the case may be. Let's say you have $200 in a week that you can spend in groceries. You go to the grocery store and you go out and pick out all your items. And do you in real life, though, do what you did when you were a kid and count each one of them and add them up one by one as you go? No. You look at it and you glance at it and you're like, okay, $3 for, I don't know, a big thing of, or like a thing of juice, right? $3 for a thing of juice. Okay, cool. Well, and I'm going to fast forward. The next week, though, you come in, you didn't really remember that you paid $3 for that jug of juice. This week, that jug of juice is $3.10, let's say. Well, do you really factor that 10 cents, or do you just assume that, oh, I buy this item all the time, it's always going to come up about the same? Maybe there's a sale, maybe there's a coupon. Now, some people are really good at couponing. Some people are really good at understanding prices. To them, I say, good job. I would venture, though, that the rest of the world does not budget that way. It's just not practical. I got a 3-year-old in the cart screaming, doesn't want to be there, complaining, kicking as you go down the aisle. Or then he wants out, and then he wants to play with your phone. Then he wants to go off and do whatever else. Do you think you're really thinking about your money at that point? No, you're just there. You're buying what you got to do to get out because albeit for the rest of the world to see you get spank the crap out of your kid. No, I'm not saying you should do that. Not saying that we do that, but I'm just saying like that's what you're thinking in your mind. I need to get this kid out of here because I'm about to lose my patience with them. All right. But you're not thinking about the money. Okay. So I'll circle back to how this all ties in. Trust me, it's a story. It's a 30-minute show. Buckle up, folks. But I hope this is funny to you too, because I laugh and I don't have anybody here to laugh at me. I don't have an audience. But anyway, so you go through and week by week goes on and you don't really think about it. Well, in 2020, we saw anywhere from 30 to even as much as 40% spike in food prices, seemingly almost overnight. Why? Thing called a pandemic and supply and demand and some price gouging accusations, but that's to be decided. Anyway, the point is, we saw a huge increase. And a lot of people finally started noticing that their grocery bill was going up. Big time. We noticed it. We started finding other sources like, mid to late, August, I guess. So we were driving home and we heard an ad on the radio for this meat distributor who's going to be out of the mall parking lot selling meat out of a frozen truck. Like, cheap too. Like 20 tenderloins for $20 or something like that. I don't remember. It's cheap meat, right? And like supposed to be good, top quality USDA. Well, if you know about the places, we didn't know about the place at the time. They're all like flash frozen, individually packed, that kind of thing. Okay. Not bad meat. It tastes okay, kind of hit or miss, but it wasn't bad. I felt, the price kind of, it certainly wasn't, in my opinion, like the kind of meat you would buy at, let's say, I don't know if you live in the Midwest, your Hy-Vees and your Fairways. I'm assuming down south, Kroger or, anyway, your mainstream grocery stores. It's probably not the same level of meat as theirs is, but still not terrible. It's got a little fat on it, and more than what the butcher at your store would have. But anyway, it felt good. You had a big old box of meat for like less than $300, because you don't just buy the tenderloins when you do that. They got these huge things, and man, they are good sellers. Oh man, you could learn. If you want to be a good salesman, I would really encourage anyone to go there and watch those guys for a little bit, because man, they know how to make you think it's a great deal. They do. But anyway, so we went there and we got all this meat and we felt really good about it, and it was like a way for us to save a whole lot of money, because I bet if I would have tried to buy even the same quantity of meat with the same cuts of meat, it would have been probably closer to $500 at the grocery store. So save $200. Sweet. Always a good day. But going back to kind of as a kid, though, you kind of have this finite amount of what you think an item costs. And that's not necessarily true because of inflation, supply, demand, and all kinds of other factors. All right, most of this is like economics 101, and I'm not a financial advisor. Please, I should have stated this at the beginning of the video, but I will say it now before I start really delving into some stuff. I am not a financial advisor or a tax advisor. Please consult a professional for your own tax or financial situation. This is made for purely entertainment purposes, and you should take my comments as such. Okay, moving on. Now I can't get sued. No, I'm kidding. I probably could, but anyway. Got to keep it entertaining somehow, folks. But that's kind of how we think, right? We don't really notice the subtle changes, and as we budget and as life happens. But then, middle of the night, Junior gets sick, and you're like, well, not only is he gonna need, his medicine that you would think, whatever it may be, you're probably gonna get some Pedialyte. You're probably going to get what we call the brat diet: bananas, rice, applesauce, and, I forget the tea. Always forget the tea. Anyway, you get the point. Like all the stuff that help with like diarrhea. Let's say he has diarrhea. Okay. I'm thinking like, no, that's not tomatoes. Tomatoes make it worse. I can't think of what the tea is. That's going to bug me now the whole show, y'all. But you guys get the idea. But yeah, and it's one of those things. So you're buying those things, but they weren't on your grocery budget, but now you got to have them. So here's the thing. Did you leave extra room for the items that you didn't know that you were going to need until you needed them? Because when someone gets sick, you don't really think about the food costs of being sick. And we're not talking about a lot of money here. We're only talking like $5-6, right? For probably a small batch of the stuff. But you already spent $5 or $6 extra in your $200 budget that you think you spent, because all those items that you would normally buy for $200 now cost $206. You know, those little pennies from the week before. So now you don't have that budget anymore. And it's really nitpicky, and you're thinking, oh, I can save it somewhere else. And you're right, you could. Most people can. I don't know how many people couldn't accommodate an extra $10 in a budget if that was it. Then you had the rising costs in electrical costs. You saw just down in Texas the rising cost of their utility bills. And now it's skyrocketing through the roof. I don't know how the one guy ended up with an $18,000 bill. That was kind of an anomaly. But I know here in Iowa, a lot of families are seeing increases $200 to $400. That's a lot. That's getting really hard for a lot of families in lower to middle income to reconcile that kind of a budget discrepancy. And so we go back to, as a kid, we have this small circle of what a budget is. And then we start learning about savings. And we think, oh, I only need to save this amount for XYZ emergencies. But we don't know what those emergencies could be. We just know we have to put money back. But is it ever enough? Will it ever be enough? Do you have enough? Do you think about if you have enough? Oh, excuse me, folks. And so, but how do you know if you have enough for those rainy day funds? They say you should have, I think the common advice is 3 to 6 months of an annual budget. But I know a lot of Americans who don't even have $1,000. Okay, I believe we are live again, folks. I do apologize for that. Yes, it does look like we are live back on YouTube, and we should be live again on Facebook. So I do apologize for that. My software crashed right in the middle. So that is unfortunate. Such is the nature of live broadcasts. So I do apologize for that. Hopefully it won't happen again. We'll keep an eye on it. Yeah, if it keeps happening, we'll have to reach out to their support and figure out why my system keeps crashing. But anyway, nevertheless, all right. So back where we were at, we were discussing personal finance, and we had just started into discussing savings accounts. So that's kind of where we're going to pick up here. If it ends up being 2 videos on stream, apologize for that. Hopefully it should not. YouTube should be able to pick up right from where the stream left off. So comment below if you have any other issues with the stream as well. I know if you're watching on Facebook, it's been communicated to me that sometimes the frame is a little bit buffery, even on a good connection. So keep an eye on that. Sometimes it helps to go out and come back in. I'm also working on my settings to Facebook, but Facebook kind of has its own encoding of how things have to go to it, and I don't get a lot of say. Even if I was using another software, I really wouldn't get a lot of say. So YouTube is kind of where I can play around, but YouTube seems to be pretty stable and consistent. So, but if you have any issues, please feel free to, because obviously we're still kind of in a beta show program right now. But all right, let's go ahead and continue here so we can kind of wrap this thing up and keep everybody going, because I know everybody is super busy in their day. And I want to thank you again for joining me back here on this broadcast, and apologize for the technical issues. So when we're discussing a savings account, like I said, you're thinking about how much money do you need? What's the worst thing that can happen? And then I was just saying, you need about 3 to 6 months of a budget. Like you're out of work, right? For 3 to 6 months. I don't think that's realistic. Most people, I think they say you should have, $1,000, minimum emergency fund, especially if you're a Dave Ramsey follower. He would tell you that you need to have $1,000 in your emergency fund to get started, then start working on your debt and all of that, which is good advice. We took the Dave Ramsey class, my wife and I did last year, and so and it was really helpful. And I'll tell you what happened to us and how it's impacting us now. And I was just saying too that in full disclosure, I still right now do not have $1,000 in my emergency fund. I did, but I don't now. And I'll explain what happened there too. But it's tough because you're planning for the worst case scenario. And then you're also trying to invest because, well, you want to retire and you want your money to be in the stock market and grow. And you want to be able to, retire comfortably with hopefully a good retirement wage and enjoy those years of, from all those years you worked. And that's getting really harder and harder and harder for Americans. And I'm about to go into talking with our budget and the stimulus package of how that's going to get even harder. And you might be able to imagine where I'm going to go with it, but nevertheless, I'm just going to finish this up here. So, and that's kind of the thing. Like, I wish I had more money in savings. I do. Some interesting life circumstances happened to me. I don't think that fell into a Dave Ramsey sort of budget plan. Maybe I did it wrong. If I ever catch a Dave Ramsey like person, I mean, I'd be happy to chat with the guy and just discuss kind of some of this and pick his brain, but he has to make a model that fits 90 to 99% of people, but I don't think it necessarily means it's going to fit everybody. I know it didn't quite in ours. It did originally, but it didn't later. Okay, so here's what happened. Okay, and I'm going to relate this to the government. All right, so the government, we pay taxes to the government to fund essential services. Like, I don't know, keep the government running. We have welfare. We have Social Security, which is the big, huge chunk of the national budget. Then we have defense spending. We got to keep our country safe. It's kind of like paying for your ADT subscription, except the U.S. spends way more than you will on your ADT subscription. Maybe. If you get the budget plan. I'm just kidding. But anyway, we all have it kind of. I'm trying to draw comparisons here to, to basically how we're supposed to kind of look at a budgeting, right? And so it doesn't always work out that way. But apologize here. I'm just trying to adjust something here. But my camera, which I am getting a new one, keeps wanting to kind of act up on me a little bit here and adjust my exposure when I don't want it to. All right. Again, technical issues, right? There we go. That looks good. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's just, how do we draw comparisons between how we look at money versus how the government looks at money? Obviously, the government has a lot more people to look after and a lot more assets and a lot more overhead, right, than we do in our personal household. But at the end of the day, a lot of people should say, well, if you don't have the money, why are you spending it? Didn't the government save, when it could have to, take care of emergency situations like, I don't know, a pandemic? And so often it doesn't appear that they did. So what are we going to do about that, I'm just going to leave the camera here because otherwise it seems to freak out every time I try to change it. So I apologize. I'm getting a new one. And maybe a new piece of software here too. So I apologize that the video is much darker now than I had it. But anyway, what's the worst, case that we could plan for, right? And how do we do that? Well, we were in debt long before the pandemic happened, so we were already behind the 8 ball, right? In 2019, and I can pull up an article, but I'm not going to risk my software acting up again. But the Congressional Budget Office said that we spent about $102 million every hour in 2019. In 2020, you can imagine it was a whole lot worse, a whole lot more dramatic. Oh, excuse me. And so eventually, though, we're borrowing this money. And how does the government borrow money? they have a new borrowing method than you might imagine. They borrow from other countries. They have bonds. So that's basically where someone says, I'm going to loan the government money in exchange that you're going to pay me back in interest guaranteed after so many years. So now you're the government and you're paying so much in interest payments just to keep up on your bonds. I'm not a Gatorade athlete, but if Gatorade wants to sponsor me, hit me up. Doubt they will. We're just getting started, so. Not big enough for Gatorade yet. But anyway, so so shameless. But anyway, so that's kind of what put us in this position. Well, okay. Now we're going to fast forward to 2020. And now we have a pandemic. I guess it was deemed necessary for us to now go on to potentially 3 stimulus packages that all have had direct payments to most Americans, making below $75,000 a year, I believe. And so how in the world does a government pay money that it does not have to citizens? Well, all gets added onto the debt. Well, in this latest round, another $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Like, I get it. It's a big government, all right? And I understand the dynamics of taking care of people who are really hurting and struggling and all of that. But we hit the 2008 recession. They bailed out a bunch of, airlines and banks and everything else. But there was no direct payment to United States citizens in 2008. At least that's my earliest memory and all that. So why are we doing it now? We can't do it now, at least in my mind. I know we want to, and I think it's a good sentiment, but I don't think that as a country we are, because if we go back to my example as a kid, only 200 coins going through the store, I know that I need maybe an extra gallon of milk or an extra thing of cheese or pasta. I need these things, but I didn't plan ahead. I didn't have a big enough budget to do it. In fact, it's kind of like going to the grocery store with no money, needing $200 in or 200 coins in food. It doesn't make sense. So we borrow it. So you're asking Joe, just standing outside the grocery store, Joe, let me have $200 and I'll pay you $220 in a year. And Joe's like, okay. And you happen to be a really important person, not just Joe Blow. And Joe Blow's like, okay, cool. Again, I really need to look at the software. I apologize, folks. And I'm probably going to wrap the show up early if I keep having these little glitches here and there. But I do apologize and thank you for sticking with me. But that's kind of what I'm trying to draw the comparison here. In the government's case, they take our taxes and they have other revenues generating sources, but it's not enough. They just don't have enough money to be paying out stimulus payments. As much as we want to, as much as the need is certainly there, it's not bad. Well, unless you listen to the latest news and you find out that only 9% of it's actually going to the healthcare costs. And then you find out that there's a whole lot of, projects that majority of the folks on the left-hand side of the aisle want for their states and all that. And maybe all those projects aren't necessarily bad, but should they be tied into a emergency fund, emergency bill? This is what this is. You don't do something like this unless it's an emergency. And I get that it stimulates the economy. It's going to help the GDP. It's going to do all these other things, but it just doesn't exist. So here's what's going to happen. And going back to retirement, I'm not going to be able to retire at 65. Most people my age aren't. My kid's not going to be able to retire at 65 now. Why? Eventually, this money has to be repaid. a lot of people get caught up on this whole short side of this. Wow, I so need $1,400. Thank you. Thank you, United States government. Thank you. And it's great. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be thankful to get the money, but what I'm saying is they should take that money and look at it as, oh no, I better plan on paying this $1,400 back and not spend this money unless I absolutely have to. That's my advice. All right. Remember, as I said in the first part of this, I'm not a financial advisor. Y'all do what you want with your money. Okay. This is entertainment, but this is what I would do. My personal decision here. I don't want to spend the money unless I need it. Like, absolutely need it. Because I know eventually my taxes are going to go up. It is a fact. Taxes will go up along with cuts to other things. It has to. There is a breaking point, right? It's like maxing out your own personal credit card. How much can you put on it before it breaks? This money, now while the United States government can print money, that has its own arsenal of, hell should raise the skin on your back effects, meaning inflation, meaning that item, that juice at the grocery store goes to almost $6 a jug, potentially, versus $3. This has a long term. You think we're hurting now with the coronavirus and the pandemic. It's going to hurt. And the pain that's going to happen is going to last a lot longer. And I go back to being a kid. And if I was the kid who bought too much stuff when I was given the original 200 coins, have even less the next time you go. That's the thing. It just keeps compounding. And I'm not saying that I don't benefit from some government services. I do. And I know that the government couldn't have planned on this. None of us could have planned on, what this coronavirus, COVID-19 situation would have turned itself into, a year ago now to the day, almost. No one. And I understand that. This is a, oh no, now we just got to do it kind of moment. And I know my thing's going out here, so I apologize for that. I'm actually I'm gonna stop something. I got another resource over here, and I'm just gonna stop that and see if that helps the situation. But what I'm saying though is, I know we couldn't have planned for it, but we have to at least acknowledge that maybe there were steps we could have taken, decades ago. Maybe there was something in the fundamentals of the United States Constitution that could have been written to help deal with disasters. I know the United States government has filed for bankruptcy once upon a time, years and years and years, decades, century ago. Hasn't happened in modern time, really. But it could. It could. Because we borrow monies from other countries. We may have bonds that we can't pay. Your taxes are going to go crazy high. And then we want to do more government spending in healthcare and all these other things, and we can't afford the things we have now. I'm not saying this to be all doom and gloom. And again, I, like so many of you, been impacted with the COVID-19 stuff. I got it myself. Today I just got a dry throat because I've been talking a lot, and I've been at my day job. Then I went to church and did all that, and now I'm here. But let me tell you and wrap this whole thing up. I kind of went all the way around. I kind of went to my end remarks before I finished my beginning remarks. And I think I did that now. And I'm glad I did that, because let me tell you one final story that'll help you understand. So if I were to follow the leading Christian, which is kind of how we look at things, my slight slant on things, let me tell you how he would do this, okay? He would say, save up $1,000 and then work your butt off. Get job, 3 jobs, 4 jobs, whatever you have to do to have your debt start compounding to be paid off as fast as possible. And there are people who are really successful at it. And I wish I could be one of them. We did a good job. We originally had $1,000 after we moved to Des Moines. And in 6 months, we managed to pay an extra $6,000 of our debt off. We did good, but I didn't do something right. I didn't have enough savings to cover something that I didn't think was going to happen for another 3 or 4 more years. Oh, man, so sorry about my throat. And that was my kidney failure and needing to go on dialysis. I thought my condition, I had several more years before I would need to look at it. But I didn't. I was wrong. And it hit much sooner. As in just this last week, I started doing them at home. And it takes up 4 times a day for anywhere from a half hour to an hour of my time. And I've been more tired this week than I was even before dialysis. I've been kind of not feeling the best. And I know it's just an adjustment. But my wife had to take and potentially lose time from work to do the training. She's been missing work several days, more often, more frequently. And yeah, she has FMLA. But it only pays if she has the PTO time to cover it. Once she runs out of that time, I mean, yeah, her job's safe, but there's no income. So, and I'm not asking for pity here, but I wish instead of getting so crazy and paying off my debt, I wish I just would have put more of that money into my own savings. Because I spent about everything I had to pay off debt, but I can't really go into debt now. The debt that I paid off isn't debt you can just add on to. It was like car loans and stuff like that, some credit cards, but now we're at a point where we went so crazy trying to get out of debt, thinking I had more time to save up more money. I didn't have enough money. And thankfully people are helping us, and not necessarily financially, but just helping with childcare so that expense doesn't get added on, things like that. And we're really grateful and blessed. So even in the worst case scenario, you can't prepare for the worst case scenario. You think you can, but you can't. There's too many dynamics. And so the government, though, I feel like has woefully not done enough to prepare for this situation. There's just not enough. And it should have happened decades ago, planning for something like this, or something that would be a national issue the way that it is. We can't become a socialist country. We can't have people just expecting to receive money from the government and who are able-bodied and not be able to work. Lord knows if I could work more, I absolutely would. I don't much like, disability and all of that and just trying to get by. I think I could have been more successful in life if I, could have had less medical challenges than I do. But it is what life gave us. But I think we could take a step back and just stop. And that's what I would tell all of our elected officials is Republican or Democrat, think about the money you're spending. Whether or not you lean on the liberal side of spending or the conservative side of spending, it doesn't really matter. Think about what you need to do to get by. So if your guiding principles, if you're on the Republican side, are defense spending, for example, what do you need to do to spend the needed amount of money in those areas to do what it is that needs done? Maybe not a huge growth plan. And the same thing on the other side of the aisle. Maybe your issue is healthcare and justice reform. How much money do you need to spend on those things to get it done? Instead of throwing money at the wall and wasting it, be responsible for the money that your constituents have given you and spend that money on the issues that your constituents have elected you to do. Now I'm going to stop there because my throat, I don't think, is going to let me talk anymore. But nevertheless, if you have any comments or suggestions, please feel free to subscribe below. I would like to get this channel on its own platform here soon. Need some graphic design work too, so if you're a graphic designer, would love to hear from you as well. I hope this has been helpful despite all the technical issues that we've been having today. I hope that you gained something. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. But at least you know why I'm thinking the way that I am. And it isn't just the kids example. It's kind of a parable to my entire how I grew up. You did used to write everything down. Now you don't. And maybe we could have written some more things down and maybe gotten less greedy. I think greed's a part of this too. I think if I hadn't have made some bad decisions out of, just out of the worldly desires, that don't really make my life any better than they could have been without them. Maybe I wouldn't have ended up in so much debt. Maybe we could have made some better decisions. Life lessons. Hopefully the country grows as we would grow as a people, and one day kind of sees where maybe the spending wasn't such a good idea. But nevertheless, if you are in desperate need of the money and you're getting the money, great. I'm happy and I'm thankful for that. If you're still struggling, all I can say is try to make your own opportunities. Make your own opportunities for growth and development. That's why I'm doing this show. I have no views right now, but I hope to change that one day. And I'm going to work as hard as I can, given my situation, to make that happen. So hopefully you're part of that and stick with me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. God bless, guys. Have a good one. Until next week.